Konnichiwa, minasan. Welcome to the Tachi Yomi podcast. How's it going, Benjamin?
It's going very good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Ladies and gents, thank you for tuning into our podcast. We're really excited to be talking about One Punch Man this episode 2. So this will be part 2. So needless to say, we'll be talking about parts that are after the season 1 of the anime. We'll be talking about manga and a lot of the parts that will happen in season 2. So, spoiler alert, warning, just saying, throwing this out, that if you want to watch the anime and you really don't want to know what's going to happen next, then maybe it might not be best to watch this. But for those who have read the manga, or for those who really want to talk about about One Punch Man, keep listening. So, yeah. Alright, Benjamin. So, where did season 1 end in the story?
It ended after the aliens invaded, so Saitama defeated all the aliens, and that's basically where it ended.
Yeah, cool. So maybe we can talk a little bit about, just give a general plot summary of kind of what happens in the next basically 40 or 50 chapters of the manga, and I'm not sure if all of it, but I know a majority of it will be going into season 2 of the anime. So yeah. So after he defeats the aliens, then he meets this hero king. We know a little bit about him. He's supposed to be the strongest human, but we kind of find out that he's an imposter, that he is considered one of the strongest heroes of all time, but he got to that place by basically Saitama. Saitama would defeat all the heroes, but King would just happen to be at the right place at the right time, and he would get a lot of the credit for it. So he became one of the strongest heroes with basically through misunderstanding. What's up?
You said you defeated all the heroes, but monsters.
Oh, yeah. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I meant monsters. So yes, he did not defeat all the heroes. He defeated all the monsters. So after King, what happens next?
Yeah, so basically the next one is Garou introduction arc.
So that's where we meet a villain called Garou, right? And what do we know about Garou?
At this point, we really don't know much about him. We'll figure out later, but at this point, he is just a human that wants to be a monster. So in a sense, he is a villain, but like he wants to be not just a regular human. He wants to be more. He wants to be more sinister, more evil, more stronger than anyone else. That's his goal in a sense. So
yeah. So when we meet him, he's we know that he's the strongest disciple of Bang. That's right. And he gets kicked out of the dojo basically because he's become too strong, but he also starts fighting against humans. So it's really interesting. This is the first character we really meet who's a human who wants to become a monster. So that's really interesting. So then after that, he is recruited to the Blizzard group. Blizzard is a really high-ranking hero, and she wants to have Saitama in her team, but he refuses that. And then afterwards is the Hero Hunt arc, so this is where we really start seeing Garou a little bit more, right?
Yes, Garou starts, literally hunting heroes, so he finds heroes, especially stronger heroes, and he just defeats these strong so-called A rank and S rank heroes kind of left and right, and everyone starts to panic, and they had absolute faith in these heroes, and yet they're losing against this guy that they have no idea who he is.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. He basically takes out a lot of the top ranking heroes, right? I think like A ranks and even a few S rank heroes too.
Yep, he took out the tank top master, and then he takes out. Well, I guess he technically takes out.
He defeats the metal bat guy, right?
Yeah, he takes the metal bat. I guess I don't know if that counts, but yeah, he almost did.
Yeah. So then while he's fighting the heroes, it gets even worse for the heroes because all of a sudden, a rival faction, or it's called the Monster Association, shows up. And it's really interesting because up until now, the monsters have been attacking indiscriminately, but for the first time, it's almost like organized crime. The Hero Association, they're facing off against this Monster Association. So the monsters are starting to team up and working together to fight against humanity. So it really changes the way humans and heroes fight against the monsters. And this is also why Garou is hunting down the heroes. So it's a really bad spot for the heroes. The cities are getting destroyed by the monsters. They don't even have enough heroes, and the few heroes that are left are getting defeated by Garou. So it's in a rough spot at that time. So while all these monsters are running amok and carrying out the evil plans of the Monster Association, where's Saitama?
Well, Saitama is actually, he hears about this martial arts tournament, and he quote unquote wants to experience martial arts. So he decides to enter in this tournament. And the reason why he thought of this is because there's this guy that was, his name is Chiranko, and he was Bang's one of his disciples. He was very weak, but he was one of his disciples, and he was also kicked out. But Saitama sees the tournament ticket or entry, so he decides to enter in the tournament and experience what true martial arts is.
So in a way, it's almost he's still continuing that quest. He's still bored with everyday life, and he's trying to see if like martial arts is going to give him more of a challenge than fighting against heroes in a way. So he joins that. And then after, inevitably, of course, Saitama wins. But the Monster Association by then has shown its true strength to the Hero Association. And they also at the same time, they managed to kidnap one of the Hero Association's top executives' children. So now there's a hostage situation, and the heroes are going to have to go off in this final showdown, or they're going to have to try to go rescue the child while trying to defeat this Monster Association. So that's basically where the manga leaves off. During this time, Garou fights against Saitama a few times. Naturally, Saitama wins every time. But as he's fighting against both humans and monsters, he's progressively becoming more and more stronger, but also more and more like depraved or more evil kind of in a way. He's becoming more and more of a monster, I think, through this process as he's fighting both the heroes and the monsters. So that's basically the plot summary of where the manga is ending right now. We still don't know what's going to happen with that. Right now, the battle is ongoing between the Monster Association and the heroes, and we still don't know the ending yet. Now, with the webcomic version, the original one that the author has writing, I think this part has ended. So people have read that. You probably know how it's going to end. But at this point, we don't know what's happened to Garou. We don't know what's happened to those heroes who are in that final showdown with those Monster Association. And we're all waiting for Saitama to show up and see if he will destroy everyone with one punch again. So that's the general plot of what's happening so far. Benjamin, is there anything I've missed or that you want to add to that plot summary?
I think that's pretty much what's happening right now. And it's kind of drawn out, but they're still fighting with the Monster Association right now.
Yeah. So, why don't we talk about some different things this time, especially since we've in this second half of the story, I guess we meet a lot of new characters and a lot of interesting themes come up, I think. So, one of the things I'm curious I'd like to talk to you is I'd like to talk about Garou a little bit more, because Garou definitely doesn't show up in the first season, but he shows up in the second half, and he's a major character in this fight leading up to the Monster Association. He plays a major role. So I guess one of my questions to you is, do you think Garou is really evil? he seems to be trying really hard to be a monster, and he's fighting against all the heroes. But do you think he is a monster? Do you think he's really evil?
I think that's really difficult to say. It's not necessarily clear. It's kind of like in murky. So it's just more like I think that Garou is, at this point, he's still a human, but like he really wants to be a monster because he's always saw that the heroes are like the so-called good guys weren't actually good, and that he saw the villains as, he thought he didn't understand why they were being always discriminated against, and always they were the ones that were being defeated. And he starts to question that, and he's always had this attraction towards the monsters. So he decides that he wants to also become a monster, and he starts training, and he picks up Bang's martial arts, but he's still, I would say he's still human, but at the same time, like, he is very not human, and he's trying to throw away that human side of himself in order to get stronger. But compared with the other, like,
it's interesting because I think that Garou, in a way, one of the reasons I think he's not attracted, but he wants to become a monster is because he's become disillusioned with heroes. He sees how a lot of the heroes are very hypocritical, that although they're the good guys, they don't do really good guy things. A lot of them, they take advantage of their hero status to get richer. They take advantage of their status to become more famous, more popular. And that a lot of the things that they're doing is basically like a bully. They're bullying people who are lesser than them. And he gets really, I think he sees how the hypocrisy basically of a lot of the heroes in society. And that's one of the reasons why, and he sees it from the other perspective. It's true, he questions, like, in the stories, the heroes always win and the villains always loses. And he's asking, like, why has people never really thought about the story from the villain's perspective? What would you feel like if you were always the one who was being defeated, if you're always being the villain? So it's really interesting. I think what throws another wrench into this is that kid that he saves, right, Benjamin? So, like, he saves his kid. What do you think about that whole part?
I think that he's really conflicting inside, even though he wants to be a monster, and also, like, they order him to kill that kid, and he's like, no, and like, I won't, he kind of says that, like, I'm more like, this isn't the kid, it's more from me, and like, I don't want to take your guys' orders or like follow you guys. So, and he says that, like, it's more for himself, but I feel like inside he still actually is human, and he actually cares for humanity, but he doesn't like the hypocrisy, like you said, and that's why he's really conflicting, even though he's trying to become a monster.
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing about Garou, too, is even though he's trying to become a monster, he hasn't actually, like, killed any humans or really done anything wrong, too. Like, he keeps fighting against the heroes, and he keeps defeating them, and he keeps getting stronger and stronger. But of all the times, like, he's fighting against heroes, he never killed any of the humans. And, like, this child, too, he's given multiple opportunities to save this child who keeps getting in trouble, and he saves him each time, even though he comes up with different excuses. And like you were saying, there's that moment where the Monster Association orders him to kill the child to see if he's really willing to become a monster or not, and he doesn't do it. So it's really interesting. I don't know how you can classify Garou. He's not really an anti-hero because he's not a hero. I guess maybe you could call him an anti-villain because he's kind of like opposed. He's technically a villain, but he's also kind of opposed to being a villain. Like in some ways, he's opposed to doing villain stuff.
I would really agree with that. That he's kind of the new category of an anti-villain because he's, if you weigh him on the scale of good or bad, or like, well, I mean, it is the question of what is good or bad, but like he tends to lead more to the monster side. Like he wants to be like the villain. He wants to be the guy that beats the heroes. But like, again, like you said, a very good point is that he actually never killed anyone. He's never like caused any destruction like the other monsters do. Like he just fights against heroes that are strong, and I think he's trying to prove himself in a sense that like he's like anyone can like do what they really want to if they apply their mind and like stick with it. And like I guess you can say he is kind of a hypocrite too, in the sense that he says he wants to be a villain or like a monster, but he still saves the kids. So like, it's
I don't know. You could say exactly. I think that's the whole point of this character, Garou. He throws an interesting wrench into that black and white world of like heroes versus villains, because he really shows you that in a way he's kind of like a villain who has morals, and in that way we've seen heroes without morals and now villains with morals, and basically kind of the whole his purpose almost seems to be the fact that a hero or villain, good or evil, a lot of that depends upon the perspective of which you're looking at it. In a way, there's the famous saying that history is always written by the winners, but if you look at history from a loser's perspective, oftentimes you see a drastically different story. And I feel like one of the things he does is kind of not shine a light on villains, because villains are still a lot of the other villains anyway. They're still very much evil. But nice. They're very much evil, but Garou kind of throws a wrench in that and basically proves that a lot of things depend upon the viewpoint, and that there's no perfect heroes, and at the same time there are villains who aren't really kind of villains. So yeah,
I think it's like that. You can't generalize. I mean, you can't generalize anything, but especially it's trying to question you, like, because you're a hero, you're not good, and because you're a villain, you're not bad. I feel like it's kind of, like you said, it's adding that wrench of, like, one side isn't always, like, good, or one side isn't always bad. So, I think that makes this a lot more interesting in the second part, because the first part was more, I feel like, focused on Saitama, and now it's shifted more to Garou. Like, he is kind of like the main character in this arc, and like it follows who he fights, all that, and like Saitama is kind of on the side, like doing whatever he wants. So yeah. You were also mentioning it's interesting comparing him with the hero Sweet Mask. So the hero Sweet Mask is in many ways, he's supposed to be a hero, but he's not very likable, is he? He's one of those heroes who's using his status to become very famous and popular. And like when you really get to know him as a character and as a person, he has really questionable judgment and morals in a way. He's willing to sacrifice people or casualties. He doesn't have any compassion, which is such an important thing for a hero to have, really, I think, is to have compassion, and he doesn't have anything. It's just simply, he's incredibly unforgiving, and he sees himself as the execution, the judge and executioner of justice, basically, this end-all, be-all. So it's really interesting comparing Garou to guys like this hero, Sweet Mask. Yeah. I think it's really interesting that Sweet Mask is like, he does it like, when he was told to like go capture the monsters alive, he's like, no, like all evil must be destroyed. And he has that like very narrow mindset in a sense that like villains are evil and they should be given no mercy, no second chance, and they're very contrasting. Garou, like, on the other hand, like, he's a villain, but he still saves the kid, and he has, in a sense, compassion, even though, like, he refuses it and he hides it all the time. He has that, maybe in a sense, deep compassion, and, like, it might sound weird, but he might be connecting the kid with himself as when he was young, so, like, that might be why he actually cares for the kid. But, like, Sweet Mask is just, like, he is doing it for the fame and for the power, and he wants to control, like, other people and all. Like, it's very visible, and how he acts and what he says, and that really is very interesting.
Yeah. So I guess we can move on to the next thing. We've talked about Garou quite a bit. I mean, fascinating character. Definitely one of the most main characters in the second part. Another question is, so we see in the second arc, we meet this character called Glasses. And originally, so he's part of this hero group called the Fubuki group, which is a group of heroes who are led by this psychic power hero called Fubuki. But all the people in the group, they're really weak, but they band together to try to become stronger. And initially, he's part of that group, but he eventually breaks away because he realizes it's no use. It's no good even if you're just following around people aimlessly. They eventually, like, if you want to become something in this world, you need to take your destiny in your own hands, and you need to start making decisions on your own. And he becomes a hero, and part of that is inspired by meeting Saitama and being with Saitama. So he starts to train and follow Saitama in a way.
100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 squats. Then a 10-kilometer run. Do it every single day.
And so he becomes a lot stronger too. Then originally he starts out as an incredibly weak character, but he becomes a stronger character as the story goes on. So an interesting question I guess I wanted to get to is, do you think other characters besides Saitama can get stronger, or, like Saitama, or become almost similar to Saitama's strength? At least we see an example here of a character who is following in Saitama's footsteps in a way, and there seems to be some results. What do you think? Do you think there will ever be other heroes as strong as Saitama?
I think it's very interesting how Saitama, like you said, inspired, like, the Glasses, but, like, not also him, but, like, when he met with King for the first time, and King finally, like, says that he isn't actually that strong, everything was a facade, that he never actually had the strength, or he wasn't that strong, and then Saitama then tells him, like, why don't you just get strong? And you could see that, like, in a sense, spark King. And, like, you don't see immediate change, but, like, it is, like, how he thinks. I feel like there's a slight change in his mindset. And then, of course, Glasses is very apparent. He starts training too. And, like, Saitama is, like, impacting them more positively. And, like, I think there is a possibility that there will be someone, like, as strong as Saitama, maybe potentially later on.
Yeah. I think you bring up a really good point. Saitama as childish and as comedical and as, like, overpowered and as ridiculous as a character in person, in the end he inspires a lot of people. He becomes good friends with Mumen Raida, one of the few people who is grateful for Saitama. He inspires King. King, like you were saying, I forgot about that, but that's right. He comes face to face with his own fraud, and he admits, hey, like, I am not the hero that everyone thinks. But Saitama doesn't care. He's like, yeah, that's fine, but you can change. And then this character Glasses to this hero, he also, after meets Saitama, he's inspired by him. So that's really interesting. But also, I'm curious, like, I feel like this whole manga, the whole premise of the story is of this character, the Saitama, that's overpowered. That's not just overpowered, he's basically unbeatable. He's the most powerful being in the universe, probably. And nobody's going to ever be able to beat him. And I feel like that's the character he is. Do you think it'll, like, I don't know, I'm curious. I kind of wonder if it might mess up the story a little bit if there are ever any other heroes as strong as Saitama. Because the whole point of Saitama is that he is the strongest guy, and it's just that a lot of people don't realize it or don't know it. Do you think it'll mess up the story if there are other heroes as strong as him?
I think it'll make it interesting because it finally gives Saitama a purpose, because up until now, he's just fighting he's a hero because it's his hobby, and he really doesn't put any effort in anything. He's very lazy, in that sense, and you never see him train ever since he got overpowered. But I was just looking back at this where Glasses comes out again, and it says I think it was interesting that the writer put in that there is great potential in him. He's been training after he left the Fubuki group, and then he's been very improving rapidly, and I think there's a potential that Glasses might. It's just hypothetical, personal opinion, very biased, but I think that it might be that Glasses might come to Saitama's level, and they might maybe face off, but I don't know, in a sense change Saitama's view, and it might not. I understand that point, that the reason why this comic is so interesting is that it's because Saitama is ridiculously overpowered, and that that kind of runs the show. There's all these other people, you get introduced to the heroes, monsters, and you kind of grow attached to them. But then Saitama just comes in and just, knocks everything down, all the drama that's built out, he just, ends that with one punch, just and it's very anticlimactic in that sense. But I think it would be interesting by adding Glasses or maybe someone else that's as strong as Saitama, finally give it that kind of battle manga taste where there's a rival, and they're actually trying to get stronger, and there's a contrast in that sense.
That's you bring up an interesting point that I didn't think about, because I initially disagreed with you. I thought that in a way the whole story is set around Saitama being the most powerful person. So if anyone ever becomes as strong as him, it kind of changes the story, the fundamental element of what this story is about someone who's a Superman and everyone else is normal. And I thought it would fundamentally change the story, but I guess if someone does, you're right, it would change the story, but maybe it's not as negative as I thought. You're right, because in many ways Saitama has not grown. All this, it's interesting because all the side characters, all the other heroes or the villains, Genos is a great example of characters who are growing. You see growth in him throughout the story. He becomes stronger, he becomes wiser, he becomes a better hero as the story goes along. Everyone changes throughout the story except for this character Saitama. He basically throughout the story more or less stays the same character. He has never grown, and in many ways it's not really his fault, because for a person to grow, they need to come in to contact with conflict. There needs to be conflict that they need to overcome, and by overcoming that conflict, you can't overcome that conflict with who you are currently. You need to change yourself in a way. You need to grow. There needs to be growth to overcome conflict and to defeat it and to come out the other side. And Saitama just never encounters that conflict, anything that can potentially grow him as a character. So he always basically stays the same character. But maybe, like you're saying, if someone ever rises to his level, then maybe it will spark that fire in him again. Maybe it will give him more purpose, and it will be a chance for him to change and grow as a character. So I guess another question that would be interesting too is there's a lot of heroes that we haven't really met yet. One of the characters I'm really interested in is this character Blast. He's supposed to be the number one hero, but we haven't met him yet. What do you think of Blast so far?
I mean, there's not much that we know about him, like you said, and he's this mysterious, number one ranked hero, and like no one has like any idea who he is, and it's like he's the strongest, yet we haven't seen him at all, and like he's very like mysterious, of course.
Yeah, one of the interesting things, there's very few we know about him, very little we know about him. One thing we know is that he defeated the Elder Centipede, which is one of the huge villains of the Monster Association, one of the strongest monsters in the Monster Association, and all the heroes can't defeat him except Saitama, of course. But so one of the most strongest monsters up until that point, we know Blast has defeated that monster once in the past. And I think the only other thing we really know about him is that he was the one who inspired the hero Tatsumaki to become a hero. So he saved her when she was a child. But besides that, we just really don't know anything about Blast. I guess interesting. Do you think Blast is stronger or weaker than Saitama? I guess at this point we don't know, but
I would say that Saitama was able to like defeat like the
Elder Centipede?
The Elder Centipede, but like Blast just like kind of forced him into hibernation, or where like he was able to run away, and then
the Elder Centipede survived versus Blast, is what you're saying.
Like, so if you like I said, there is so little that we know about him, so there's very difficult to say which is stronger if you don't know anything about him. But like I would say, like one of those two things we know about, or a couple things we know about him, like just seeing that, like Saitama was able to defeat the Elder Centipede, so like maybe Saitama might be stronger, but like you don't know at what point that was at. It could have been like Blast was like a kid and he defeated this Elder Centipede. Like we really don't know. So and like but I think he's a very interesting character, and he gives this kind of like, in a sense, like he keeps readers like questioning, who is he? Like, is he stronger than Saitama? Like we're just saying, is he like, who is he? What is he like? And that kind of builds anticipation, and I think that's good in that sense that he hasn't been revealed yet. But
yeah, another thing that's interesting about Blast is basically he's not that he's gone missing, but well, that's basically what he is. I wonder why he never shows up. The Hero Association often calls upon him for help, but for some reason he never responds when they call. The story kind of says that he shows up when he wants to show up, and he fights only when humanity is on the brink of, destruction, basically. But because he's such a super powerful, because he's the most powerful hero, and because he has saved humanity so many times in the past, he's given leniency. In a way, the Hero Association lets him do whatever he wants. I wonder what made him, like, why he's gone, why he's missing in action, in a way. That's interesting. We just don't know much about Blast at all, I guess. Another thing, too, is another hero is Metal Knight.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
He's the 7th. If I remember correctly, he's the 7th in the S rank, and like, ever since he destroyed the meteorite, he used to be 8, but he was now 7th. But like, at that moment, we kind of see the guy that might be operating him. Like, he kind of had like, you kind of see his mouth and all that, but like, you don't see, you kind of see his lower half of his face, but like, you really don't. Again, we don't know about him that much, but like, we could kind of understand what kind of person he is still, because there's a lot more material and like things to look at about him. Like I could say he's very selfish, maybe hero in that sense, that he pretty much does whatever he wants. He comes whenever he wants. He leaves whenever he wants. And when the first time we see him at the meteorite, like Genis asked him to like cooperate, but he's like, no, I'm just gonna do whatever I want, and like, I'm only here to test my newly developed weapons, and I don't care if I die, because it's just this machine.
This is just a robot. Yeah, it's just a machine. Mm-hmm.
And like, he really doesn't care about other people at all. And the other time he appears, like, again, every time he appears, he's just is out of the blue, and like, he just does experiments, or he like collects certain after the alien invasion, he just collects all the pieces and then just takes it and like. But
I remember another thing when they're planning their raid against the Monster Association, and they're arguing about what to do about the hostage, how to save him. And Metal Knight is basically like, oh, what we need to do is just sacrifice the kid and make sure that none of the monsters escape, and like just destroy all the monsters in the Monster Association at the same time. And he says like, just sacrifice the kid. He's like, I don't know, like he's willing to make sacrifices with human lives. And I guess in a way you could also argue he's very practical.
Yeah, he's very realistic.
He is. He's basically saying that the survival of like a town or the humans, or the survival of the other people, the great, basically justifies sacrificing the few. But in a way, that's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was saying that like I think it's that typical like thing. It's like whether the mean or the is it the I can't say it. It's like whether you should put more importance in like the means of how to do it, or like the end result. Like he puts more like emphasis on like it's for a greater good. Like some sacrifices are necessary, and like again that could be debated on again that's really difficult topic. But yeah, sorry, what were you trying to say?
So I think the thing about Metal Knight 2 is that he's exactly the kind of hero that Garou really doesn't like. Because he is this hero that is selfish, practical, and very much willing to not save people or sacrifice people if he judges that, if he believes his judgment is better. Because one of the problems I think about this argument is like, when you say, it's such a difficult thing to say, but when you're saying the survival of the great justifies the sacrifice of the few, I guess the big question is, why do you get to decide that? Why are you the one who's able to judge that? And I think Metal Knight, in a way, he decides that judgment, but why is his judgment correct? Why should we go with what he thinks is the greater good? Why should we not save the few? And I think that's an interesting perspective.
I really agree with that, and I think it's very interesting. He's really similar with Sweet Mask in that sense. Both of them are kind of like, in a sense, playing God. Like they're deciding who should die and who should live in that sense, and like they're very selfish. And Garou, on the other hand, is like he really dislikes that. He dislikes the hypocrites, and he's very selfless in that sense. Like even his like own his main goal of becoming like the strongest villain in that sense is because he was kind of sympathetic to the villains being defeated, and in that sense you could say it's for himself, but I feel like it's a bit deeper than that, and he actually cares a lot more than he might appear.
The difference between him and the other guys is like Metal Knight or Sweet Mask, they're not willing to put their own lives on the line in order to save people, whereas Garou is like, Garou was willing to place his life on the line to save that kid. And I think that's a really good point you bring up. He's willing to be selfless in that way. So again, just another thing that really makes this Garou character difficult, and a lot of these heroes interesting too. I guess a thing that's interesting too, I find, is that a lot of this One Punch Man runs, the whole story, since Saitama, there's no conflict with him, there's no villain that he can really fight that will match his strength, or like you were saying, that gives him enough of a conflict for him to grow and change as a character, that I feel like a lot of the conflict in the story isn't so much about Saitama fighting other people, or it's not about physical strength. But a lot of the conflict, to me, it seems to come from the fact that Saitama is just not recognized for being one of the strongest guys. We, the audience, know. And a few select characters who just happen to be at the right place and at the right time to see Saitama in action, they are the ones who realize, and we realize how powerful Saitama is. But a lot of the story runs on this misunderstanding where the rest of humanity doesn't understand Saitama. they look down on him, they despise him. Most of the other heroes, except for a very few, they don't understand him. And I think a lot of that drives the story, because we as the audience, we want to see Saitama being recognized for who he is and for his strength, but we don't see that. And I think that's a lot of tension in the story. I'm just curious, do you think Saitama will ever be recognized by the majority, by those heroes, by humanity, for who he truly is? Do you think his hero rank will continue going up? Do you think he'll ever reach like A rank, S rank? Do you think he'll reach like one of the top heroes and be recognized for his heroic deeds, for who he is? Or do you think he will always be misunderstood by everyone else?
I think that's a very interesting question, and I would say that at some point he probably will be recognized. Like, up until now, it was just like dumb luck in the sense that King happened to always be in that moment where like Saitama defeated the monsters and like he took the credit. But like at this point, I feel like it's shifting from people know that like he's strong, but they don't know like why, or he's like mysterious to their view. Like they feel like he's using some dirty trick. Like whenever he fought in like the martial arts tournament, they're like, "Oh, you must have used a dirty trick. Like, you know, how is he so strong?" And they can't accept or like fathom the fact that they were defeated by this guy that doesn't look strong at all. And like I feel like a lot of people like their view is so closed in a sense that they can't acknowledge that. And like, but like, I'm pretty sure at one point, like, Saitama will come out and just defeat like one of the strongest monsters and everyone might be there. But like, I think, then he might be acknowledged, but like, I don't know if that should be the end of like the comic where he's like, oh, everyone knows he's like the strongest guy, he's number one in S rank, and but like, will that really fulfill Saitama? Because I feel like it won't, in the sense that like I feel like in the sense he knows that he's the strongest, and that even if I feel like if everyone like affirms that, then like he really doesn't have any purpose. Like I feel like the reason why he's still doing like he's still a hero is because people don't acknowledge that, and like in a sense he kind of does want it. Like he doesn't.
Well, a lot of it, I do think a lot of his motivation is, well, I don't know if he really cares about being recognized a lot or not, but I do think a lot of his motivation comes just because he's a good person and because he wants to be a hero and because he wants to, fight for people who cannot fight. But I'm also curious, remember in the Deep Sea King when they're fighting there and all the humans see him defeat the Deep Sea King, but there's that one asshole human who's like, oh, look at all those heroes who fought against that Deep Sea King, they must have been super, super weak. Or like if that monster was defeated by some C rank hero, basically Saitama, if that monster was defeated by that super weak-ass hero, then all those other heroes who fought to sacrifice themselves to try to stop, the villain, the monster, they must have been, super weak, or they must have been useless. He basically calls all those other heroes who fought against the monsters useless. Their sacrifice has no meaning, and he takes away all that heroism and all those people who gave their lives to save this asshole dude who basically says, oh, they were all useless. What weak, what pointless heroes. And I feel like even if Saitama gets recognized, that there's always those asshole humans in the world who doesn't want to recognize people for their greatness. Saitama's worked hard, he's trained hard, he's achieved what he has through hard work. But, in the world, there are so many people who just don't want to recognize, who's not willing to recognize that, who wants to cut other people down. And I feel like maybe even if Saitama defeats a strong monster, even if a lot of people see him doing that, like you said, the heroes are going to doubt him, saying, "Oh, he must have cheated or used the dirty trick in some way," or humanity will be like, the other humans around him will not recognize that, or they'll undermine that greatness that he's achieved. I don't know. What do you think, Benjamin?
I really agree with that, what you're saying, and that there's always going to be naysayers. You know, this is not for the manga, but like in real life too, that like, no matter like how much you try, no matter how much good you do, like people are still gonna hate you, and like people are gonna say like, "Oh, you know, you're such fake," and you know they're gonna be against you. But it's just the important thing is like keep going. That's what I would say. So you can kind of give that motivational thing to everyone.
There you go. But that's really great, Benjamin. I agree. That's what makes Saitama a great character.
Yeah.
A lot of the heroes, a lot of the humans don't recognize him. They despise him. They don't like him. They think he's something other than he is. But he's willing to keep fighting for those humans. He doesn't give up in a way.
Yeah.
And there's those few people who see that, who recognize that, like that Moomin Rider. Or like Bang, yeah. Like all these, he has these few core friends who, even though he might not think of them as friends, they are like friends, and they recognize him and they support him.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, like you're saying, is not to give up even when you're faced with adversity, and when even if a majority of people have a negative opinion of you.
Yeah.
That you shouldn't give up. And you should also treasure those friends and those family and those people who really support you.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, okay, interesting. Let's go through a few more questions. I guess connected to the fact that Saitama, will anyone ever recognize him for him having power? Do you think anyone will ever discover for King being weak, or that King doesn't have power?
I feel like that potentially might happen.
Yeah?
That, like, I feel like that would happen, but Saitama would be like, no, like, I feel like what Saitama did with the Deep Sea King, he would be like, I think he would stand up for King.
Yeah.
Just like knowing, I think Saitama would kind of be like that.
Yeah. See, I have a slight feeling that I might think that King might just never, like, he will always be misunderstood.
Maybe.
Yeah. That King engine, I love it so much. The King engine. It's really Everyone's hilarious. Like, oh, the King engine is roaring. So tell me, what is the King engine, Benjamin?
Well, it's basically him just being so scared, and like, I mean, he explains it himself that like it's like he has his heartbeat gets so loud when he's scared that other people can hear it. So it's kind of really funny, but
the King engine, it's so funny. He becomes so scared, and there's like this menacing aura coming out of him, and all the villains and all the monsters who see him crap their pants because of how scary looking he is, and like this menacing aura. And the whole most awesome thing about the King engine, or whatever they call it, this power, the King engine is roaring, is that he's created such a reputation of being so strong. Like, the villains just start making up scenarios in their head, where King, like, when the King is sitting, he stands up, they're like, oh shit, he's coming, wait, what is he gonna do? Maybe I shouldn't attack him, maybe this is a trap. And they just read way too much into, like, every little thing that King does. It's amazing. I think as I said, it's one of the things that I like about King. I think he's a great hero. He's just so funny, and we all know that he's not strong, and inside he's a scaredy cat. But he just gets away with it. All the other villains think he's just super strong.
Yeah, I feel
the
like
King engine.
It's funny that like at some points they're just like they don't even fight. They just think he's so strong, and they're like, "Oh, please, we'll stop attacking humans, so please." And they just start begging. It's really funny.
Yeah, they beg for mercy. Yeah, in a way, I do hope King no one ever discovers King being weak. I think that's kind of what makes King so great. Is he knows he's weak, but
he just can't stop.
Exactly. He can talk his way out of anything, and he's got this awesome aura. I guess he's got this really scary face. Not scary. It's a cool face. He's got like these 3 scars going through his eyes, and he's like he looks such hard boiled. He looks like such a hard boiled, strong guy, and I think that's what makes his character so funny is that we know he's weak, but just everyone misunderstanding. Like there's a time where he runs away from a monster, and all the heroes are like, "Oh, he must have realized there's another monster or hero or villain somewhere else. He must be going to fight them, and we need to take care of this monster." And it's just like everyone just reads way too much into everything he does and says. So it's just great. It's just great.
Yeah,
So
it's that kind of comical there. It's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's also what makes this comic great too, is that it's very comical. It just doesn't take itself very seriously. In a way, it is very much such a good parody of all those heroes and in comics and manga out there right now, where the stakes are always like, to save humanity or save the world or save whatever. But this very much parodies that, and it kind of makes fun of those, like, all those heroes who are just taking themselves way too seriously.
Yeah.
Saitama doesn't take himself seriously.
No.
He jokes around all the time, and I think that's what makes this One Punch Man so interesting, is because it's such a parody and such a comparison against, I guess, the whole superhero genre in a whole, is that it just doesn't take itself seriously.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. So. Oh, another interesting question. I think this also connects to Garou too. Do you think all monsters should be destroyed without mercy? Should they be killed without mercy? This is a question we were talking about before, but what do you think?
I think it goes into the realm of ethics. Like, I think it would relate to, like, do you think, like, all criminals should, that have, like, received capital punishment, or, like, not? Like, should there be, like, a chance of redemption? And that's a really difficult question, but, and, like, I really don't know, but, like, from what I think is that at least they should be heard, I feel like. But, like, some monsters or villains might take that advantage and say that, we're trying to be good, and then, they might just stab them in the back. So, like, that's why it's so difficult to say whether there should be, it has to be one way. It has to be, like, that all villains should be, like, not killed immediately, or it has to be all villains should be killed to, like, not create those very difficult situations. But
the whole thing, though, is that there are these difficult situations, because some villains, they were just monsters. They were born monsters. Their whole purpose in life is to kill humans, to eat humans, to destroy humans, and that's all they've ever done. There's no remorse. They're just human eating machines, kind of, or that's all they do. There's no shred of humanity or goodness in them. And then there are other villains, not just Garou, but there are other villains who might have been a human, or there's those shades of gray where those villains who might not have killed a human, or who it's a minor crime, I guess. And again, I guess you're saying that we can't have different standards. We can't say, like, I'll kill all the bad monsters and give, like, the not so bad monsters a chance, because then the problem is going to be, how do we judge, what is a bad villain that needs to be killed and what's a bad villain that needs to be given a second chance too.
It's just you kind of can't play God in that sense. Like, you just don't know. Like, it's really difficult in that sense.
Yeah, and in many ways, a lot of the villains, the monsters, they have a lot of justification, not justification, but they have pretty good reasons for attacking humans. Like the very first villain that comes out, Virus Man, he basically is born from like environmental destruction. He's saying like, look at how much, you humans have destroyed Mother Earth. And I'm here to basically stop you guys from polluting the earth or destroying the earth further. And of course he's a villain and he's a bad guy and, he causes destruction in the town and things like that. And Saitama defeats him in one punch. But if you really listen to what he's saying, he does have... You can kind of agree with what some of the villains are saying because they point out a lot of the problems that humans have. A lot of the... Not the evilness. Well, I guess the evilness or the bad things that humans do.
Yeah.
And in many ways, like, they might be evil, but they have a good reason behind why they're doing that. Saving the world, for example. Yeah. And again, should those villains be killed? Should those monsters be killed mercilessly? Or should they be given a chance? It's interesting. Yeah.
I think it's more of a rhetorical question. That, like...
Yeah.
It's just up to you, in a sense, maybe.
Yeah. Because that's kind of one of the things that the Monster Association kind of... In the beginning, they try to bargain with the heroes, and the Monster Association, they basically say, hey, we want to create... we want to create a town or a place where monsters can live without being hunted down by heroes. And you later on, you kind of find out those monsters were bad guys anyway, and they were kind of bullshitting. But still, like, I don't know. Can monsters and humans live? Could good guys and villains live together? In harmony. In a way, society kind of basically says no, because even in our current society today, the people we decide is good get to, live in society, and the people we decide is bad, they don't get to live in society. We lock them away in jails. We separate them from society. Our society is not a place where good people and so-called bad people really live in harmony. We separate, we ostracize what we consider bad. And of course, even with society, even with these people we have deemed good, there's so many people who are bad and evil, and a lot of times they're a lot worse than the people who are in prisons. Yet in society, we've kind of judged saying that, either, it's the safety for society, it's the safety for everyone else, or it's the safety for their own good, it's for, we need to keep them, whatever, we say different things, but in the end of the day, we don't really give, villains, we don't really give people who have done bad things a chance. We still ostracize the good, we ostracize the bad, separate it from the good.
I think that's a really good point, and why it's so difficult is, like, each person just has different standards, different morals, and that's why, like, there's no, like, absolute truth in that sense of that, what is good, what is bad, and, like, it's really difficult to say what is good and what is bad, and you really, like, people that you think were actually good in history are, like, turn out to be, they've done terrible things, and the people that we've always thought were, like, evil or, like, really bad had done some good things, and then weighing those, like, which is better, it's really difficult to say.
Mm-hmm. It is. I guess, these questions there are no really good answers. It really gets into those philosophical questions that, different religions, different ways of thinking, they really try to tackle these questions. What is good? What is evil? How do we define that, or how do we measure that? It's a lot of, since this manga does tackle these questions in a roundabout way, it's very interesting. And as you've pointed out, I don't think there are any good answers. Another interesting thing. Do you think Saitama will ever stop being a hero? Because we see him many, many times question his drive to keep being a hero. Because he doesn't have that conflict. He's so bored. There's a point, I think it was 69, 70, somewhere, where he's walking with King and he's asking him, I'm not sure if I want to keep being a hero anymore. And King, gives him a rousing speech and motivates him to keep going, to keep fighting for the greater good, to, what it truly means to be a hero. Which kind of pisses Saitama off because he also knows that King is kind of a fraud. And he's like, oh, you of all people, why are you giving me the speech of what it means to be a hero when you're... But, he listens to it and he keeps going. But he's constantly battling... He's battling these negative opinions of other people. He's battling his motivation to keep going, his boredness, his tediousness. Do you think Saitama will ever stop being a hero, that he might just quit for one day, hang the cape up?
I feel like you brought up many interesting points. And one thing I thought that I feel like if the writer, of course it's up to the writer, but like, I feel like at one point he might put up the cape, but like, I don't think that will stop him from doing good or like, helping other people. Like, there might come a situation where he can't be a hero. Like, they might kick him out of the Hero Association or like, people throw stones at him. But like, I really think that even if those situations come, like, Saitama really does question that, but like, at the sense, like, he is very consistent and he has this really concrete that he questions why he's a hero, but he does want to help people. That's like his fundamentals, and like, I feel like he might quit, but like he won't quit being himself and helping other people. So
that's you bring up a really good point. I didn't really think about it that way too. But you don't have to. He in many ways he didn't have the label of hero before, and he was already helping people. So. And I didn't really think of it that way. Even if that hero or that label of, hero or whatnot gets taken away from him, as long as, I guess, he is a fundamentally good person, no matter where he is, no matter how strong or weak, no matter what happens to him, I think he will keep trying his best to save people, to help people. That's something I didn't really realize, but that's true. In many ways, I guess being a hero to him doesn't matter whether he's a hero or not.
I think that, like, we kind of say that there isn't, he doesn't have any like confliction, and there's no like adversary in his view against him. But I feel like he has to fight that thought of like why he's a hero, and like the people, his enemies isn't always the villains. It could be, like, the people around him. So in that sense, like, the story does, like, some might say it's boring because he always defeats his opponent with one punch, but I think it's not just the fact of one punch. It's, like, really deeper in the sense that, like, that he's really struggling with that, too. That the sense that he's too strong and, he's, like, in a sense, like, there's this apathy in him, like, he doesn't want to do it because he's so strong, or, like, he's kind of bored in the sense that, like, he's so strong. Like, I know when people, like, climb up, the mountain and, be successful and, they're on the top, they look back down and, some people might just be like, oh, I've reached the top, that's great. But when I look around, there's, like, nothing around me, or, like, it is kind of, in a sense, like, empty. Some might say empty.
Emptiness. In a way, you've gotten to the top, but it feels... Maybe you thought that if you became super rich, it might give you meaning. Maybe if you thought that you became super famous, it might give you meaning. Maybe if you thought you became the best at whatever it is, whether it's basketball or swimming or ballet, that when you reach that pinnacle, that some meaning will be achieved. But I guess there are those people who kind of realize that they were chasing after something different, and then they go through a similar struggle of Saitama too. It's like, okay, when I gained Saitama in this case, I've gained strength. What do I do now? What do I do next? So yeah, that's really interesting. So I guess this episode's gotten pretty long. I think we can close off pretty soon. Towards the end, why don't we talk about some of just the funny scenes that we saw throughout the manga that are awesome. So I'll start with one. So in the first season, we don't really know what Saitama's hero name is, but in the second season, we find out Genos gets a super cool name. He gets a double cyborg or something like that, and then Saitama's hero name is Baldy Cape. It's so good. You know, of course, Saitama, he's so sensitive about being bald, and it's just so good. And everyone else has such awesome hero names, and he's just Baldy Cape.
That's I really like that part. I kind of cracked up in that. Another really funny thing that I thought was like, every time Garou faces Saitama, it's just like, you know, Garou's like, oh, there's a hero there, I need to, you know, beat him up, and, you know, I'm strong, and then Saitama's just like, what are you doing? And then he just smacks him down, and it's just like, I feel like it was building up with Garou, you know, he's fighting all these heroes, he's getting stronger, but like he sometimes loses, and, you know, you're reading from Garou, and then Saitama out of nowhere just comes out and just like whacks him down, and it's just, it's really funny.
Yeah. Because two or three times it happens several times, and the funny thing too is that Garou, he's like knocked out unconscious, and then he wakes up and he was like, what the heck happened? I don't remember. Like, there was a time where he was super tired, and he meets Saitama and he gets beat up, and he wakes up the next morning, he's like, I can't remember what happened last night. What the heck? You know? And I guess in a way that's why he keeps like fighting against Saitama. Like, sometimes it's an accident, he just bumps into Saitama and Saitama just whack. Or like there's that time where like Garou runs away from a restaurant without paying for the food.
That's right.
And then Saitama shows up and he's like, he catches, you know, Garou, and beats him with one punch. But the whole point the whole reason that Saitama even found him in the first place is that he himself was also in that restaurant.
Yeah.
He just happened to be in the same restaurant, and also happened to not have money to pay for it. So he pretends to be a hero and chases after Garou, when in reality he's just trying to cover up the fact that he also ate food and ran away without paying.
Yeah, he's really petty, and it's really funny.
It is funny. Yeah. It'll be interesting later on when Garou and Saitama like finally face each other with full strength in a way, and see what happens. Another funny scene is Sonic. Sonic, he keeps coming back every so often just to remind you that he exists.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, like every so often he like shows up and he's like, I've trained, I've become stronger. Saitama, I'll defeat you now. And then, you know, you have all these epic fights with Genos and Sonic, and you're like, oh wow, this is so cool. And then Saitama shows up and he's like, hey, what are you guys doing? Stop making all this mess in front of my house. And he just whacks him. And I thought it was really funny. Like, this time he was like, he doesn't even like touch him in that sense. He just like walks past him and he just like, you know, he blows him away. And it's just really funny. Every time Sonic comes out, it's really funny.
Yeah. Or the other scene where he's given a chance to become a monster, and if he becomes a monster, he becomes super, super strong. And he's wondering, at first he's like, oh, I don't need a monster to beat Saitama, I can keep training. But then he starts thinking, he's like, oh, whatever, if I become a monster, if I can beat Saitama, then it's worth it. So he tries to become a monster, and he eats. So to become a monster, you need to eat like this. What was it? Like a monster heart or something like that?
Yeah,
I can't remember. Like a monster fruit or
like
some kind of meat that monster fruit. Yeah, something that turns you into a monster. And yet the whole point of it is that you have to eat it just as it is, but he takes it home like a chef and he starts cutting it up. You know, he's got a nice wine, he puts all the sauce and he cooks it and he starts eating it. He's like, don't wait, don't you like leave me behind, Saitama. Just you wait, I'm gonna become a monster. And like he cooked it, so he totally ruined the thing. Yeah, and then he also got like diarrhea too afterwards. Yeah, that was really, really good. Yeah. Any other funny scenes that you remember from this time around?
Well, I thought it was interesting when he enters martial arts tournaments, and he's just like, again, it's the one punch, but like all he cares about is his wig, and like the whole thing, everyone thinks they're like, he's like so scared, like he can't move. Everyone's too strong, and like his adversaries are too powerful. He can't even move, but he's actually just trying like to hold his head so his like wig doesn't come off.
Yeah, so he shows up to the tournament in disguise because he's supposed to be some other guy, and he chooses like the weirdest wig in the world, and it's just sitting, it's like flapping on top of his head. It's gonna fall off at any moment, but he's just like, using his hand to hold it down the whole time. And he's fine. He keeps defeating everyone with one punch while holding down that wig too. So yeah. Another funny scene is there's that moment where like Saitama's at his home and basically all his friends are there, even though he doesn't consider him friends. But like Genos is there. Genos' creator, was it Dr. Xeno, I think, or was it something like that? And then Bang is there. Bang's brother is there, King is there, Fubuki is there, and Saitama is like, oh, get out of my house, why are you here? But everyone brings a hot pot, and, they bring expensive meat, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, it's okay. You guys can stay here. Yeah.
He's just like, whenever he sees something like he wants, he's like, oh, sure, and all that.
Yeah. In many ways, like you're saying, he's so petty and he's so materialistic. The moment he sees, like, he sees the nice, expensive meat, he's like, oh, no, never mind. You guys can stay here. And then what happens to... Oh, go ahead.
No, like, remember in the first season when Genos is like, I'm going to live with you. And he's like, hell no, you're not going to be living with me. And the second Genos, like, puts this stack of money. He's like, oh, you can stay here. Did you bring your toothbrush? And he's like, it's just fine. Yeah.
It is. It's that comic gap of Saitama. He's super strong, but in many ways he's so petty. And then there's like that fight too, where, like when they're eating the hot pot, because all these like S-rank heroes and super strong and smart heroes are all around with Saitama, and when they're eating that hot pot, it becomes such a crazy thing. They're all fighting over the meat and the tofu and the vegetables, and Saitama's like, oh, this is not a hot pot without the cabbage, and someone takes all the cabbage, and he gets super pissed, and it was just a funny scene. It was where, in a way, he never admits that they're his friends, but they're really good friends with him. They're a really good gang group. So it's kind of funny. It's always funny when they get together and do stuff. So, yeah. All right, I think that's it for this episode. Benjamin, is there anything else that we should have talked about? I think
we're great. I think we talked about many stuff and deep stuff. So I hope you enjoy some of it, and I hope you come back next week to listen to our next episode of Tachi Yomi podcast.
Awesome. So season 2 of One Punch Man is coming out in April 2019. So that's coming up in half a year. People who have not read the manga yet, look forward to it. It's going to be great. If you've listened to this far, probably it means you you didn't mind having a few spoilers of what's going to happen. But in many sense, the manga too, we don't know. We're not quite sure how this ending is going to happen between Garou and the Monster Association and the heroes. I mean, we kind of know that Saitama's going to show up and beat everyone, but it's interesting nonetheless how it's going to get to that point, what's going to happen to the heroes. So in many ways, this is very interesting. We're excited to see how this ends as well. So this is great. Thank you for listening to this episode. Benjamin, what are we doing next week? So what is the schedule? What's the schedule for next week? What will we be talking about?
Okay, we usually keep it a secret so everyone, is more anticipated and all that, but next week we are actually doing Ajin. We're going to be doing Ajin. So, if you've never heard of that, well, you'll find out.
Definitely check it out. So Ajin is, up until now, we've been focusing a lot on the masterpieces, just our really good manga. Ajin is going to be the first in our series where we focus on hidden gems. Ones that are really good manga and anime that not as many people know about. It's not quite as famous, but they're incredibly good. Ajin Season 1 and Season 2, you can you can watch it on Netflix. The manga is definitely out too. It's not completed, but you can go read that as well. It's very great manga. So if you're interested, watch the anime on Netflix. I'll read the manga by the next episode and we can talk about it. So okay, I think that's it for this podcast. Thank you, Benjamin, for joining me on this podcast today. It was very fun talking with you.
Minasan, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful week.
Awesome, sounds good. Okay, では皆さんまたね。
さよなら。